Hello and welcome to the TechBytes audiocast. My name's Tim and I'm from the TechBytes blogazine, and with me is Dr. Roy Shestowitz from the TechBytes website.
It's Friday night and I'm gonna get sauce. I fought the troll and the troll lost. I fought the troll and the troll lost. He tried to boss me and was outbossed. I fought the troll and the troll lost. I fought the troll and the troll lost. Underneath his creeper bridge, hoping goats will cross. Quoting Ashcroft and Tom Ridge, I fought the troll.
Right, good evening. Hello and welcome to episode 42 of the TechBytes audiocast. It's myself, Tim, and Roy here tonight, and we're hot off the heels of episode 41.9, which was our first tests into video recording and putting up a video on YouTube for the TechBytes show, which will be accompany this show. So it's going to be a little bit disjointed this particular episode, and we'll probably cover a few of the issues that we came across during the recording of the video. So I hope you'll check that out on YouTube when the show notes display the link. And without further ado, we'll press on to some news. Unlike before when Roy normally starts, I think I'll just mention very quickly, anybody who listened to the previous episode when we had Rusty, the guest on, we were talking about the UK, and I was making a comment how the infrastructure in the UK didn't appear to match what's needed for high-definition video streaming and the bold claims that the government is making about digital Britain. And it's very interesting that over the last few days there's been an article released in relation to the speeds of broadband, and it's come up with the conclusion that UK is rubbish for broadband. In fact, it goes one step further and says that out the entire planet, only one city in the UK hits the global top 100 for broadband speeds. The UK, on average, hits about 4.3 megabits per second as its average speed, connection speed. And the surprising thing is, where you'd expect London, the capital city, to have the fastest connections and to be given the highest priority in terms of network speed, it appears that London is only getting, on average, 3.5 megabits per second. So it displays basically what we were saying on the last episode, and I think the claims of digital Britain and how certainly many people are saying that we should have our own version of Silicon Valley in the UK, and certainly we're a long way off that, and we're a good couple of years away from the predictions that the government are making. So that's something to think about. It's just something I wanted to throw in. The link will be in the show notes. It's very, very interesting reading, especially when they make a comment about there's one mobile service provider apparently, and it hasn't named it here, and I'll have to have a look to see which particular provider this is, but apparently one UK mobile provider had a connection speed of 21.2 megabits per second, so it'll be very interesting to find out who exactly that was. The only other thing I'd make a comment before I pass over to Roy to see if he has any comments he would like to make on it is that recently when my net went down at home, my landline connection went down through my own fault, I hasten to add. I was having to rely on tethering, and I was using a T-Mobile contract HTC phone, and I noticed that the speeds I was getting, whilst it wasn't ideal for Skype for whatever reason, it was certainly faster than my landline connection, which just really emphasises what this report is displaying. It's a fantastic report. It's been highlighted in the Inquirer. The link will be in the show notes. But before we go on to the next topic, I'll just pass it over to Roy and see if you have any comments about that particular article.
Very much depends on how they define London. I haven't seen the article. You haven't mentioned this to me before. I can imagine that it's whether they include the suburbs of London will change things tremendously. If you look at the center of London and the kind of the center of the nervous system in places like Canary Wharf and center of Westminster and all these places, I'm pretty sure they will be pretty well wired. If you start to count the outside parts of the city, usually it's to do with the density of the population, because when they lay down the foundations for a fast internet connection, they have to consider how many people will subscribe to the internet, how much they'll be willing to pay, and based on this information, they can invest more in copper or fiber, or whatever. I had a chat with a person in Australia today, and he was talking about the fact that the government is willing, very eager, in fact, to connect people using fiber. And then I asked about the connectivity with Asia in terms of underwater cables, and he says it's very good. And what increasingly people say, quite rightly so, is that the speeds of the network can in fact define the success of an economy, especially in the digital age. If you look at companies like Google, for example, they very much depend on bandwidth and they depend on low latency. So if they in Silicon Valley or somewhere around Stanford have very good latency, they can deliver a very good service to people. If they have to be based in a place that's not going to deliver bandwidth in a very good way, the whole kind of cloud-based computing thing is not going to work too well. It's not going to scale too well in terms of the width of the pipes, how much bandwidth they can suck into to index, to suck out, push out to people, so that they can kind of suck out the results pages within something like 1 second. We don't really think about all of these things that the way they work today. If you're using a Google from the UK, you will get it from a data center, most likely the UK, just for reasons of speed, and they don't even deliver proper HTML because they try to really get results to you as fast as possible, even if it's going to be. People don't realize how much Google emphasizes the issue of speed. Even they have a SPDY protocol that they want to replace the existing infrastructure with, just to get the packets more quickly to the users. And all these issues matter because I know that when I work from a slow connection, I'm miserable sometimes when I try to get a certain task done. And I know that I could do it twice as fast if the connection was better, and not just my connection, just the infrastructure. Right now my connection is about 17 megs a second, but obviously it varies, but if I connect to my host, it's most of my sites are based in Ireland, and I can get very fast speeds. I can get 2 megabytes per second if it actually reaches the peak speed, and I've seen that before, so it does in fact happen. And it saves you a lot of time. If you get backups of gigabytes of data, you can just take it within a few minutes and be done with it. So yeah, that's the thing about networking. It's interesting. We had this discussion with Rusty the last time, and I think we should diverge a bit from just being focused sometimes on the issues of software, and think of the issues which, as I mentioned before, this affects more the nations we tend not to think about. We don't think about them in terms of what mobile platforms they use, what computers they use, what software they use. But one of the things they have is the issue of capacity of the network. And this affects their choices of an operating system, because people will probably tell you if you're in a place like Nigeria, lots of people will choose Windows over Linux, even though both of them are like free as in free to buy in the streets, because the number of CDs change, and because trying to download these things over the network is really hard. And even if you could do that, it's just going to be quite expensive. So people don't tend to be very much attracted to Linux in certain places simply because it's really hard to get Linux, or it's more expensive to buy Linux because it's on more CDs than Windows. Yeah, so you have all these multiple CDs like Red Hat used to have. They no longer do it like that. But of course, then there is the discussion, and there was a discussion about removing the GIMP from Ubuntu. And people will say, oh, well, initially people will just be able to get it via, apt-get or Synaptic or whatever. There would be the people who will say things like, with Unity, they'll say, well, if people aren't happy with Unity, they can just go and get the GNOME shell and normal GNOME 3 kind of vanilla flavor desktop. But it's not really simple. If you live in Africa, it could be really, really expensive to do that, even if you know how to do that, and it's going to take you ages to do so. So people might use a different distro or just be really disappointed. They rely on what's burned to the CD, and they will open web pages, but for them to fetch a package that's including dependencies will be maybe 50 megabytes. It could take a long time to do so.
I think I remember John O'Bacon a while back having this discussion in regards to removing software and not including something or including something. And I think he made very similar points, because it certainly was a surprise to myself, because you don't consider other countries when you're looking at what's defaultly packaged with a distro, any particular distro, and you don't appreciate how big these files are. And we now live in an age where 10 megabytes, 20 megabyte download is nothing, certainly for me or for Roy. But you look back 10, 15 years and you imagine other countries with the lack of infrastructure that we have, and then you see that it does become a bit of a problem. So yeah, it's a fair enough point. I mean, just to close